So let's welcome David to Creative Conversations.
Thanks, Saveen. I'm happy to be here.
We are happy to have you as well, David. So, David, I want to roll back a little to go to the very beginning, how your journey started in a very non-traditional fashion. So, can you tell us what it was? How did you begin this journey?
Yeah, when I was 18, I could have gotten into just about any school in the United States. My best friend went to Harvard, and we had similar marks and scores. But I was different. I didn't know it at the time, being in the U.S., but I'm a Bania. My parents were both entrepreneurs. 3 of my 4 grandparents were entrepreneurs. My great-grandparents were entrepreneurs. And so I was very entrepreneurial from even a child. I ran a business when I was 7 years old. I published a newspaper when I was 13 years old. So by the time I was 18 and graduated from 12th, instead of going to university, I went out into the world to make my fortune. I actually started my actual serious first business when I was 23 in management consulting. So I didn't go for my degrees until much later, and that's how I did that.
So you started earning before you got your first degree.
Correct.
Wow, that's amazing. That's pretty non-traditional, I must say.
Yeah.
David, so what was this business about?
Well, I actually was a management consultant in the area of direct response marketing, with a special focus on the industry of collectibles, because I had been earning as a numismatist, somebody who buys and sells rare collector's coins. So I was helping other companies to sell theirs through direct response marketing. Now, a lot of my Indian students say, but David, sir, you didn't have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. You were only 23 years old. How could you be a consultant? And I said, well, in America, it's easy. To be a consultant, all you do is you create a signboard and you hang it. And it says, expert, I is one. And that makes you a consultant. But it's not being a consultant that's hard. It's getting people to pay you to do consulting. But I was able to do that.
And when you provide true value, you definitely get hired as a consultant. And that's
yes, and that's where you saw the business solutions you referred to. I created marketing solutions for my clients that enabled them to collect over $1 million in sales.
Wow, that's amazing. And after this stint, being a management consultant, you went on to get your bachelor's and an MBA from the Thunderbird School of Business. So can you tell us how that added to your skill sets?
Well, it was almost a necessity, because the field I was working in, rare coins, kind of disappeared at that time. The value of gold and silver went down, and therefore there was no market left for what I wanted to buy and sell. So I realized I probably needed some letters after my name, and so I got BA and then MBA. But because I was non-traditional, I was older than most of my batchmates, I probably could have taught some of my courses at MBA, but it did help me. It got me a broader perspective on business, a little more technical knowledge than I had, more of a global perspective, because I was always interested in international things and foreign languages and foreign cuisines. So, and most of all, what my MBA got me was a global network. And that was one of the most valuable things I took away.
And that's one of the reasons you're here as well at Atlas Scale Tech University.
Yes.
Entrepreneurship.
Yes, I never could have made it to India without that global network, and I'm so happy I did make it here.
Great. Another thing that I noticed, another path-breaking approach that you have made is, we always think that you have to be an engineer to create a technical patent. And you have 2 patents to your name. And you're not an engineer. So can you tell us, how did you make that breakthrough?
Well, I want to admit, first of all, that although I had the idea for at least one of them and part of the idea for the other, I did need engineers to help me write the patents.
Okay.
But let me tell you the story of the first one. I've been a problem solver and an innovative guy all my life, but I had a problem I couldn't solve. I'm actually quite clumsy. and forgetful. So my problem was this. I had a desktop inkjet printer for my business correspondence, and I had pre-printed letterhead, and I would always put the letterhead in the wrong way. And I would always insert the envelope the wrong way.
Yeah.
I cannot count how many sheets of stationery and how many envelopes I've printed on the back or upside down.
Yeah.
Or,
We've all done that, yeah.
well, I don't know how many have done it as badly as I did. And I'm a fairly smart guy, but I felt so stupid. I couldn't figure out how to do it. But all the solutions that they developed, like those little raised icons on the printer or the on-screen, Microsoft Word had an on-screen guide, it just didn't connect with me because my brain is wired differently until I was working in our innovation lab in US, and I heard about a technology called Anoto. Anoto started with paper that had small radioactive dots, carbon dots, very tiny that you couldn't see them. And then a pen would activate the dots, and because it would do that and radio frequency signals could be transmitted, that would tell the pen where it was on the paper. And therefore a check here might mean you were checking a certain box on a survey. Or a signature here might mean it would know that you were signing a contract. And that information could be sent back to a hard drive. Well, not being an engineer, that wasn't what concerned me. What I said is, aha, the paper can talk. Yeah. Talking paper.
Great.
And so that's what I thought of, and I said, oh my God, if that paper can talk, I know exactly what I wanted to say. And so the patent I developed was, for idiots like me who couldn't put their paper in straight, the paper would talk to the printer.
If it's wrongly inserted.
Exactly. The message would be something like, this idiot is putting me in backward. And the paper and the printer would say, no issues, I'm shutting the gate, it can't come in.
So it wouldn't print if it's inserted.
Correct. It couldn't do that.
And did that get utilized? Because I still find it difficult to...
Well, no, that's never been developed into a marketable solution like most patents,
Right.
because thankfully most people are not as idiotic as I am when it comes to inserting the paper. But the concept is there. It's on record as a patent for anybody who wants to use the idea of paper and printer interacting.
Fantastic. I think you brought up a very valuable thought in your story as well, David, that sometimes there are some really great ideas and you also patent them, but they're not real-world business solutions. So can you throw some light on this? Because you have a very strong viewpoint.
Absolutely.
On this.
Yeah, somebody actually did that study back in the 1980s when there were only about 60 lakhs of US patents. Now it's about 90 lakhs. But at that time it was about 60 lakhs. And they've discovered that only 0.2%, only 1 out of 500 of those patents actually made a profit. And so I teach people when I'm training them to be innovators, I said, don't bring me ideas. Even completely original ideas that are patentable don't make money. Ideas are cheap and plentiful. Profitable ideas, not so much. What you need is not an idea, what you need is an insight. And so those patents are all based on technology, but not about insight about what people want.
I've heard, we were just at one of the IITs last month, and the head of the entire innovation cell said, we have so many technology ideas, we don't know who will buy them. And I was so surprised. And now I know where that comes from, because you're so engrossed in your technology and your idea, sometimes you don't know if there's a real problem it is solving, right?
We talk about 3 interlocking circles. Most inventions are A, because I want to, and B, because I can. But the missing third circle is, does anybody else want me to do it? There is no such thing, Saveen, as a technology which can purchase itself. Whatever you design, whatever you invent, whatever you create or innovate, it has to meet some need for someone, otherwise it won't generate a profit.
Yeah. So can I make this fair assumption that a profitable idea is also adding a lot of value to the customer or the purchaser's life? And that's why they are buying it and using it more and more.
Yes, I teach that to my students and to young people who come to visit us here at Atlas Skill Tech University from senior secondary school. We host them often. My mother told me when I was very young, David, the world does not owe you a living. And I put it in my latest book. It's the 12th secret for success. You can only be successful if you become a value creator. Money doesn't grow on trees. You get money for exchange. You deliver value to other people, they will give you money in exchange. So completely right.
And you've written 6 books, David, and this is one of them. The latest book is for the students, youngsters, who can learn about success. So can you tell us the inspiration behind this book? And yeah.
Absolutely. I shifted to India and settled here in 2008. So I'm celebrating 15 years of living in India, loving it, and this is my home. People wonder if I'm going back to US. I say, no, I want to be here, not there. So, main dil se Bharti hoon. I'm Indian from the heart. But when I came here, I started getting invited to guest lecture at business schools, and then I started teaching classes as an adjunct or visiting professor, and now I'm a full-time professor. So I've gotten to know through that and through my friends with Indian families a lot of the philosophy about success, a lot of the philosophy of how we train and advise our young people. And I found there were some gaps. The overwhelming emphasis is on studying hard and getting good grades. That's brilliant, that's wonderful, nothing wrong with it. But those are not the only ingredients for success once you get into the world. And so I wrote my book, 12 Secrets to Reach Your Goals in Work and Life, a success guide for young Indians to help people who are 17 to 25 years of age and who have these decisions. What stream should I study? What career should I pursue? What are the skills and traits I need to develop to give them all the things that Mummy ji and Papa ji and Sir and Ma'am at school never taught them, so that they can reach success much faster. I did this in my own life, but I didn't do this plan until much later, when I was already close to 30 years of age. As a result, it took me 20 years to achieve my dream job. But if my young people will read this book and take my lessons now, I predict they'll reach their dream job in 7 years.
I wish I had this book early on. So thank you so much for talking about the book. And it's available on Amazon. And we'll put the title also on this videos for people to buy it as well. I want to move to the next step. The same aspect that you mentioned in one of your talks, that value lies in the eyes of the beholder. I had heard of beauty, but this is new. David, can you tell us why did you say that?
Sure. Again, that same impetus or drive to invent comes from I like the idea. It's what I want to make and what I can do. Often the things that we value are not the same things that customers value. And if we skip the step of understanding who the buyers are, what they desire in life, what would be a gain for them, what would be a pain for them, then we're not really solving their problems. And their history is just filled with so many technologically wonderful inventions that didn't satisfy any need and therefore failed.
So, if I was a multinational company and I was leading the organization, or I'm in the leadership team, how do I find what the customer values the most? What should I be doing as a large organization?
Well, we teach design thinking. And that is a formal 5-step process. I liken it to a sport with 5 innings. And so if you play through the entire 5 innings, you have a very good chance of coming up with a successful, value-creating solution that people will purchase. But the most expensive and longest and most labor-intensive step is the one that most companies skip. It's the first innings. We call it empathize, and we actually get out into the marketplace and we spend time with customers and we watch them and we do skilled interviews with them, or we sit them around a table and give them activities and we watch them do these activities in focus groups, and that's how we learn what they think and what they feel and what they do. Because only when we understand what they think, feel, and do can we understand what will make their lives better and what they will value.
Absolutely. And I've been doing a lot of interventions with the design thinking, and we've seen that the process of discovery is not very straightforward. And because it's more qualitative and not quantitative, there is a resistance to go through that, as you called it, very intensive process. So I think that's really critical, that before you generate an idea and assume that there is a market and a customer waiting to buy it, you go the other way around, right? You start with the customer and work your way backwards.
Yeah, that reminds me of a project we did in consulting where one of the most innovative entrepreneurs I'd ever met, really admire this guy. He'd built a tremendous company from nothing. But in this one case, he'd put the cart before the horse. He'd figured out there was a brilliant technology to meet a real need, and he'd invented a solution.
Okay.
And then he engaged me to help him find a market. And so it was sort of backward.
It was reverse.
And we tried very hard because it was a brilliant technology. But what we found was at the price point that he had to charge, value wasn't there for the customer. It would solve a problem, but not at a price people wanted to pay. And unfortunately, we couldn't give him a market for that. And surely enough, it met a deficiency in some of the infrastructure in some places in India, and in the interim, in the years since, the infrastructure in India has improved, as we all love to see, and so even the need for that product is less today.
Yeah, so it was a great technology and actually a value-added solution, but it was not really solving the problem of the customer at the price point it was being sold.
Yeah, that's what we call the value equation. Customers love the benefit, but they're always balancing the benefit against the price. And if the price is too much, value is not there.
Yeah. So that technology didn't get used, and right now it's not being leveraged by any customers.
Yeah, that's correct.
Great. So David, you spoke about your consulting work with a lot of MNCs. I would love to hear some really interesting stories from there. Can you share a couple of them?
Yeah, one of the interesting ones actually concerns a client whom I found very difficult. We weren't quite on the same page, but I'll tell you how we worked it out. It was one of the large software firms based here in India, and they came to me and said, David, we want new ideas. I said, brilliant, that's what innovation is all about. So I asked them, what's the goal? They said, we don't know. Well, it turns out the business unit they wanted me to work with was worth $1 billion US. So I said, well, why don't we set a target of $100 million US worth of new ideas? And they said, oh, that sounds good. So then I said, okay, let's do a full design thinking project, play all the 5 innings and come out with $100 million in ideas. They said, no, David, we just want the ideas. I said, you just want the ideas, okay. Do you happen to have any $100 million insights? And they said, no. I said, well, then how do you expect to get $100 million ideas? Well, they didn't have an answer for that, but I said, let me see what I can do for you. They brought me in for a 2-day idea generation workshop. But of course, I knew better. So for the first half day, I sneaked in some work to find out some insights that they actually did have. And these were very bright, very capable people. So they did have some insights. And because they did, we were able to spend a day and a half working on ideas, and they got well over $100 million worth of ideas out of that session.
Great. And what happened after that? Did they go ahead and execute them, and did they make the $100 million?
Well, I talked to the client a year later, and I'm very sorry to say that they were not able to, or just chose not to develop any of the ideas that came out of that workshop.
Yeah, I think that really is what happens sometimes, and that breaks my heart too. A lot of times we run these idea generation programs and then realize most of it didn't get utilized. And one of the things that I've noticed, which you can also validate, is the clarity and the commitment to innovation is really important to make the idea come true. And I think in this case there was a miss, right?
Yes, and in our consulting work, we do a lot of workshops. I have two audiences. One is the people who actually are supposed to come up with the ideas, and we teach them the design thinking methodology and tools. But we have a separate workshop aimed at the senior management about how you create a culture of innovation. And this company evidently didn't have that knowledge. They didn't really create the right environment and structure and policies to make these ideas into reality.
Absolutely. And you spoke about how you can run an entire journey on innovation and design thinking that you can use to create a more sustainable way of innovating. So can you walk us through any of those stories?
Sure. Well, I'll actually do both, if you'll give me the time. The first one is about how you actually accomplish design thinking. An industrial products company here in Maharashtra came to me. Their product is a B2B product, so it's sold by companies to companies. And we worked with them to determine a good goal. It turns out that due to competition, their margins had cut in half. And I said, well, there's an important challenge. Why don't we see if we can design something that will restore the lost margin, double the current margin? They said, fantastic. And they invested in going through the entire 5 innings. We did field research. We took trips to various places in India where we could observe the customers and get to know what their needs were. We defined some needs. We came up with some innovative ideas in the 3rd innings, and then we prototyped them and tested them. And the upshot of that program was the company identified an entire new market space where they had not been selling solutions, and they came up with solutions they could sell. And at the end, they implemented enough so that they were able to identify 2 additional percentage points of margin, which in a company of that size is very significant. So that's one of our big success stories.
Great. And this is more real as a success story, right? It actually happened. And
it translates to rupees and paise.
Yeah. So what it does is, again, like I see there's a lot more commitment and the clarity of the need to make that shift that is there. And I think that shows in the execution of the entire process of innovation.
Exactly. They were willing to play the full sport. And it's not, I sometimes call it high stakes poker. Back in US, we did one such project, and the result was a $450 million solution. So we tell our clients, please invest. Yeah. Don't try to shortcut the empathy stage. Don't try to do it, halfway. Do it fully, but aim big, aim high.
Great. I think this is, it's very heartwarming to see how this whole thing pans out. I want to also ask you about, you spoke about the shift or building the culture of innovation, because like you said, it's like playing a full-fledged sport. You need to put in effort to create the environment for innovation, and it's not easy or straightforward. So can you tell us some insights on how to do this better? And you've done this with a couple of organizations.
Absolutely, and it's not as complicated as you might think. What we teach is that it really boils down to 3 areas. You have to have the right policies, you have to have the right innovation programs, and you have to have the right corporate structure. But the finest example of our work in that area with one of the largest conglomerates in India, I'd rather not name them, but prior to their work with us, they had taken the position that they didn't want to risk on new things. They just wanted people to bring them proven solutions, and if you brought a new one, they'd say, please prove it at some other company and then we'll buy it. And they could do that. But about the time just before we engaged, they had a change of heart. And they said, that will not get us the rate of growth we're looking for. We're going to shift our philosophy and we're going to start inventing things in our company, in our group of companies. And I have to say that in the intervening years, they've done exactly that, and they've grown tremendously. But when I was engaged along with some others to help them develop that culture, my knowledge of how it's done in the US was considered valuable. And so we did a full design thinking project on the subject of their company. We observed their employees. We had interviews with their employees. We conducted focus groups with their employees. We worked with some of their subsidiary companies and got to know what their philosophy was and why some of their younger people were not opening their mouths and coming up with ideas. And as a result of that, we designed a couple of solutions which were implemented and which have resulted in crores and crores of new ideas and are still in operation to this day, years later.
So, as you mentioned, it's the structure, policies, and the programs. All of them need to be working together to make this happen.
When they're aligned, you can get amazing results.
Yeah. Great. So, one last question, David, and this has been fantastic, is for our audience who are mostly professionals working in large organizations. How can they build this mindset or approach to innovation? What should they be doing? What are the skills they need to focus on in your everyday life? Like, what should I start doing tomorrow?
Well, let me answer that by talking about the 3 qualifications that I look for if I have to hire someone to work in the field of innovation. And they're not traditional qualifications at all. The first one is curiosity. Because I define innovation as combining existing elements in new ways to create value for customers. I'll repeat that. Combining existing elements in new ways to create value for customers. A person who's curious, who knows a little about this and a little about that and this framework and that fact and this methodology, has a bigger bag of tricks, has more elements with her that she can pull out and combine in a new way. So number 1 is curiosity. The second qualification that we look for is a track record of independent thinking, original thinking. There are many people who are more comfortable just going with the crowd. And what we look for is somebody who doesn't need the approval of others, somebody who is willing to go in a new direction, march to the beat of his own drummer, and come up with an original idea, because that's what innovation is. It's an original combination. And the third one, which is kind of surprising, is a good sense of humor.
Oh, wow, okay.
And why is that? I didn't know this until I actually read an article. But if you think about what makes it funny, what makes a thing funny, I actually read a definition of humor. Humor is the sudden recognition of an unexpected relationship.
Absolutely.
And when, oh my God, I didn't see that before. That's what makes it funny. The sample joke that they give is, you know, the beach was so crowded that day that the only people getting a suntan were bald men. It's like an unexpected, oh my God, okay, the crowded, no sunshine through, only on the tops of the heads. And so the reason we look for that is because innovation is making these connections, understanding these relationships, and inventing solutions based on that. So again, anyone in the audience can work on your curiosity. You can work on taking an independent stand and coming up with something original, and you can work on your sense of humor, which is a lot of fun anyway.
Great. Thank you, David. This was a lot of fun and a lot of learning, and I hope our audience gets the maximum out of this creative conversation that we got to do with you. Thank you so much, and we hope to have you once again soon, but this was a great start.
The pleasure is all mine, and I really hope that the audience will go out and invent some great things to build up our wonderful country of India. Jai Hind.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much.